Nash's
Top left. Yeah, that's done.
Oh,
yeah.
Here we go. And we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this session here today. My name is Jomar Reyes, and I'm hosting an amazing mind of innovative and collaborative minds. The topic that we're covering today is the future of collaborative innovation in media, intellectual property, digital platforms, 4IR, which I've discovered is the fourth industrial revolution, and artificial intelligence. So just give a wave, everyone, to the audience. We have Dr. Ricardo Greenfield, who's the branch manager of EURA AG in Portugal and Brussels. Subhash Ghosh, who's the founder and CEO of Technoplat in the UK. Rhona Morrell, who's the founder of cocoairlie Consulting in the UK. Renata Ramalhosa, who's the founder of Beta. Beta, if I got your name incorrect, you can throw something at me later. My name is Jomar Reyes. I'm the founder of a brand leadership community, and I've been kindly invited by Dennis Guardo, who's the creator of this event, to host today. Welcome, everyone. Thank you. It's been great to get to know you guys in the green room and get to know a bit about you. I don't think any of us have met before, maybe not, but it's always nice being thrown into a random bucket where you've got something in common. Now, in doing my research, I've thanks to LinkedIn, I can stalk quite effectively on you guys. But one thing that really came across was I saw that innovative minds, you guys are really pushing the boundaries in your fields, and in some cases trying to make a difference in society. So if I could start with you, Ricardo, you're the branch manager of EURA AG in Portugal and Brussels, and I believe you're also a managing director there as well. But you started your career at brands like Bosch and Deloitte Consulting. So can you take us a bit in a couple of minutes of your journey from really your beginnings of the career to where you are today, and why you're in the direction that you're doing and what you're doing as well?
Sure. Thank you very much, Jomar, for the introduction, and thank you also, Subhash, Rhona, and Renata for joining me here. So thanks very much. I'll try to keep this very, very short. So I started up as an electrical engineer, and of course, I joined an engineering company at Bosch. That was where I first did my internship, and I learned a lot. Especially, I liked the way that they were organized and focused out on engineering. I then thought, okay, engineering, maybe we're a little bit too focusing on small details. I like the big picture. So then I moved into Deloitte, into management consulting. There I felt a little bit that I was missing actually getting my hands dirty and messing around with technology. So from then, the next step was to do the PhD in engineering systems, which is basically a mixture between engineering and social sciences management. And this, I think, is where it's actually set me on my course, focusing on innovation. And my PhD was in University of Porto also with the MIT in the US. And I focused mostly on innovation ecosystems, so innovation networks of SMEs, research institutes, large corporations that get together to create new technologies, new innovations that it's not really possible for them to create it on their own. And this actually brought me to the company that I'm working now at EURA AG. So I actually founded the branch here in Portugal, and now we're also working in Brussels. We work a lot with the European Commission. And I won't go into too much about that, but I'm very happy to be able to work with innovation ecosystems. We're managing a lot, not only in Germany, but also in Europe. And it's very cool to basically be working in practice in some of the most interesting innovation ecosystems in Europe, and having it related to the research that I was doing when I was doing my PhD. So in a nutshell, I wouldn't take too long about that, but of course we can go into greater detail of these networks a little bit later.
Yeah, thanks, Ricardo. Now, Subhash, your beginnings of your career was in India, and interesting enough, in the area of ISP and communication with Vodafone, and then a company, GTL, which is partly owned by the Disney company. So getting really involved from telecommunications into content and media. Tell us a bit about that background and moving forward to bring to where you are today.
Wow, yeah, thank you. Thanks, Jomar. So yeah, it's a bit of a long journey. It's close to about 28 years now. Started my journey with Vodafone way back in '95, and then obviously moved sort of up the value chain from mobile to move into core networks, which were GTL what to happen, and then from there to move to digital media and high-level content play. So I guess 20 years of work life, which ended with being the head of digital for a company owned by Disney in India, where I was the head of digital and SVP. But 2011, when I kind of started my own journey as an entrepreneur, which has been 10 years now, I started with a very, very niche advisory company. And while in one side, we sort of do stuff like technology transfer, knowledge transfers, on the other side, I also hold the patent for an audit service. And globally, we're the only ones who are offering that kind of audit service. My second calling came with the company Technoplat, which I sort of representing today. We are purely in the innovation space because over the last 20 years of my employment days, I've been part of some real game-changing innovations. And Technoplat essentially talks of incubating innovations and growth of the startup community. We kind of are based out of UK and Singapore, helping a lot of tech startups globally through this virtual incubator. And my belief is very simple. Innovation is a great word. Everyone talks of innovation. Everyone does innovation. But only 1% of the innovation actually goes to make that whole sustainable revenue. And through Technoplat, we're trying to identify those innovations and see how we can create value for the startup community and for the entire ecosystem.
Thanks, Subhash.
Pretty much what we do.
Yeah, thanks. Now, Rhona, you have a very interesting background with two, or at least one of my favorite brands. We have Red Bull and Heineken. So, two brands that are very strong. Red Bull, obviously, innovating media and the way that things are done, not just by producing a drink. And you've gone to now where you've got your own consulting company. Do you want to tell us about your journey and what really drives you?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the intro, and it's great to be on the panel with everyone today. I guess I liken my 20-odd years in a career very much to having we were joking about it earlier, around having the amazing boyfriend and the really, really bad one. And I think that exposure to many brands and businesses over the years, there was always this inner ability in me to get frustrated by process and procedure and, the people who had great ideas on the ground. And I spent 4 years working in innovation too, and kind of practicing the principles around, stage and gate and incubation and seedling and all of those sorts of things, and culminating in, there's got to be a better way of doing this, and sort of going out on my own, which has been sort of 4 or 5 years now. So I spend a lot of my time in the startup world looking at agility, new news, new tech, but I also do a lot in the sustainability side of the world and new tech developments in that space, which is a huge passion for me. And again, kind of coming across, but I think the entrepreneurialism and the innovation part, and we'll talk about this later, is really about, I get a ton from my work with the Prince's Trust, to some of the work I do as a trustee. It's that constant need and want and excitement to learn, and that for me is innovation. That's me.
Thanks, Rhona. Now, Renata, you're the odd one out here. You've had a government background in the sense of when we think of bureaucracy and how things should be done. Now, to break out of that in terms of founding BETA, can you tell us a bit about what it was like? You've worked for the Department of International Trade, the DIT, and the Foreign Commonwealth Office for 16 years. So I don't see those areas as areas you'd find people that would have that startup mentality. So tell us what made you the exception.
Well, it's all about the mindset, but thank you very much for the invitation to Denise, to Hilton, and to all the team that organized this forum, to all my colleagues here today. I'm based in Brazil, in São Paulo, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of BETA Brazil, which actually is part of the BETA as a group, which was founded in Portugal, in Lisbon, by my colleagues, co-founders of BETA Brazil. And I started by studying chemistry and then environmental engineering. And the first part of my career was really working as an engineer in water and wastewater management systems in the Netherlands, car batteries in France, and really kind of on the ground, on the industry ground. And then because I also like the macro sort of strategic geopolitical area, I got into the UK government, working first for the FCO, Foreign and Commonwealth Office, and then on the climate change area during the time where the UK government still is, but at that time was very, very vocal on climate change, on the carbon markets. It was a time of Kyoto. So I worked very much on that area. And then I moved on to economic diplomacy and trade and investment, which I did in Lisbon and then in Brazil. The reason why I came to Brazil was to be the Deputy Consul General in São Paulo and to head up trade and investment for Brazil and then investment for Latin America. So after that, I thought, oh my God, I think I need to do something different. It was quite hard because, it was a great job, actually. But I really wanted to see how this new world was about. I always paid an interest. I think engineers always bring that with them, to understand how things work, how can things be done differently. And then I was challenged to open BETI in Brazil as a hub for Latin America, and I accepted. I was really afraid. It's not easy to change from one thing to another, but I'm loving it. And we do collaborative innovation, which I will be able to expand a bit later. But yeah, it was very hard, and I think that anyone who wants to change a career from a very stable one, wonderful comfort zone, to a very sort of shaky one, it's a brave one, and I think I was. But it has been a great journey, and I think we have great stuff to share, especially of our work here in Brazil and Latin America in the past 2 years.
Oh, fantastic. That's a great story. Now, on the topic of collaborative innovation, and I'm suspecting that this is going to be a terminology that's going to be more and more prominent. We've all spoken about innovation. It's probably one of these words that I know copywriters hate because it's a word that's constantly thrown around, maybe used, misused, but this whole word of collaboration, and I'm really interested to hear from all of you, what does collaborative innovation mean to you? What has it meant to you in your career path and moving forward? So Ricardo, if you want to open your thoughts of what's your experience with collaboration and innovation.
Sure. So thanks very much, Jomar. I will take sort of the engineer stance in it and be very pragmatic. Or at least I think I see it very pragmatically. It's, in our experience, when one company alone is not able to pull the necessary resources or competences to actually create an innovation, it makes sense to actually bring with other partners together. And this is somewhat that we have tend to be doing. So we've actually created over 50 of these networks in a very specific field. So let's see, for example, a concrete example. Self-driving cars, for example. This is something that in Europe has been lagging behind a bit, right? So we pulled together with the German Ministry for Technology and Economics, and they co-funded or sponsored a network where we bring together companies that are niche experts in self-driving technology. Then we can bring some end users, for example, with the airport in Frankfurt, Fraport, and together you build a new technology. We're trying to innovate to address certain needs where you would never be able to do it alone. Right? So this, from let's say, looking at the players more or less on the same playing field, this is something that we tend to work a lot. There are also some other situations where we talk about cooperative innovation, and this is where the playing field is not level. And here, for example, the work we're doing with the European Innovation Council Business Acceleration Services. So here we are talking about a portfolio of around 7,000 SMEs, some of the most innovative in Europe, and we're trying to bridge them together with investors and with large corporations. Here we're still talking about cooperative innovation, but let's say the playing field is not really even. And here we try to get SME-friendly corporations to present their challenges, right? What challenges they are bringing. And then on the other hand, we try and match them with these innovative SMEs that we have from the European Commission. And as I would say, this is the other side that we normally deal with corporations. So I think it's always about creating something new that you can't create on your own, if I were to sum it up. And at the same time, look at what dynamics you have within the ecosystem, what interest you have. Sometimes you can leave the actors to themselves and they will come up with something. When the playing field is not as even, it's good to have like a helping hand and to make sure that the corporations that you're working with are more friendly. In our case, things have worked pretty well. We have some friendly rules to help this corporation, but maybe we could go into a little bit that future on. So this is a network that we're focusing on. The final point that we're really trying to bring now is also focusing on specific domain, which is on the hydrogen topic. And this is also where we really need to bring together players from all over the value chain. So you have the creation, you have storage, and you have transportation, you have the end users. And this is something we're developing also now, which is called the hydrogen bond. And it's basically a hydrogen community that gathers startups, universities, research centers, and large corporates. Here we're really trying to have a level playing field to bring these together, right? Offering challenges, networking events, among other things. But we can go into detail about these other points just to give you a little overview of these different ways how we see cooperative innovation from our side.
Yeah, and that was one of the things when I pointing out where you're really changing society and looking at hydrogen in a different way. That's super interesting, right? Now I'll jump to you, Rhona. In your case, collaborative innovation. I mean, you've been working independently, so I would imagine that you would have needed to seek out some collaboration to foster some of this innovation in your own role. But tell us in your own words, what does collaborative innovation mean to you?
I guess the core fundamentals for me is around the culture, whether that's you as an individual or you as an organization. I think often innovation and sustainability is kind of like separate departments. And I believe that actually those things should run through the DNA of the company. It shouldn't just be an innovation team. And, you know, I've seen where you have very open businesses where genuinely some of the simplest and the best ideas come from, you know, people on the workforce, people in the manufacturing sides, etc. And we remove egos. I think it's important to allow that kind of risk taking and culture within a business. I guess as a single entrepreneur, you're constantly having to be innovative because, as Renata was saying earlier, it's really scary when you go out on your own. But actually, that's a little bit like innovation. We all know the stats on how many actually succeed. But there's another final piece for me, which is around the wider collaboration. Is when the cause is greater, that's when true innovative leaders come together, because it's not about them or them making money on the bottom line. And equally, for those who want to do brand extension and things like this, let's be honest about the true definition of innovation and true white space tech versus or brands or ideas versus what is just a brand extension. So anyway, that's me.
Yeah, that's a fantastic, some fantastic viewpoints there about having that greater vision. I'm going to jump over quickly to Subhash, and also with, I suppose, the coming from India, with like a country with hundreds of millions. I can't remember the exact number of the population there.
1.3 billion to be precise.
1.3 billion people. So is collaborative innovation? Does that have a different mindset coming from that cultural background and bringing it into London? And what's your experience with collaborative innovation?
No, I think that's a very good question, because if anyone in this world is thinking that they are doing innovation on their own, it's a really foolish idea, because the whole essence of collaborative innovation is that you are trying to leverage on each other's strengths, best practices, and knowledge. Okay, because if you're innovating something sitting in some corner of the world, sitting all alone, you just don't know how that innovation is going to really impact positively, negatively to your business. Is it really worthwhile? Okay, to me, to answer your question, is collaborative innovation is something is 1 + 1 = 11. It's not 2, because that gives you the multiplier effect. It has to be sustainable revenue. I can make 20 pages, 100 pages, 1,000 pages worth of documents saying, hey, look, that's a great innovation. Great stuff. What's next? So when you sort of, in my life of 30 years or whatever little bit of time I've spent as Mother Earth, When I launched an audit business back in India, way back in 2012, I was very clear that, hey, look, I'm going to call this an audit. Right. Now, again, audit is a word which is synonymous to people who are in the audit business, like Deloitte and KPMGs of the world. Okay. So I made sure that, hey, while I insist on calling this an audit service, let me make sure I also get this sold to in the market to the audit players. We started talking to the audit players. Deloitte became my first customer and a partner who started selling my services to their media clients. Now, this is where whole collaboration comes in. They understand my strength, I understand their strength. What that leads into, to faster access to customers, whom probably I would have never got in touch, never could connect. Yeah. Similarly, with today's life, if you look at what we're doing at Technoplat, same stuff. We are collaborating with University of Edinburgh, larger technology companies, helping the startups to create a product and fine-tuning the product for larger markets. And to get back to the core of your question, India is a place where innovation is happening probably by the hour or by the day. It's a huge market. You don't know who's doing what in which part of the world. But how many of them are coming to world platform? How many are really getting that attention? Not many. So it's not the volume which counts, it's the quality which counts, and the impact it's creating in terms of revenue, development, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, fantastic ideas there, and really deep thoughts as well from your home country as well. Renata, your experience with collaborative innovation, I'm sure you've got a very different journey with your background.
Yes, I mean, I think nowadays we often say that collaboration is the words of the future, or is already part of our lives. I think we always collaborated. I think the difference now, and that's why innovation needs to play a role, is that the challenges that we all face are so huge that we really need to organize our collaboration in order to tackle those challenges. So, I mean, if we look at innovation and all the methodologies around, I mean, before we used to call it open innovation, where in fact we would open our challenges to be solved or to be helped solved by an external community, which could be a laboratory or could be a university or a startup or an ecosystem. That's collaboration, right? I mean, you have a business challenge and you want to solve it, and you know that internally you probably do not have the tools or the people that can solve that challenge, and you need to collaborate with the external ecosystem. Now, the thing is that nowadays, for example, innovation can bring collaboration amongst competitors. If, for example, you want to tackle a challenge that is common to all, such as, for example, climate change, or taking plastic out of packaging, or tackling deforestation in the Amazon. So, and that's a different level of collaboration, is for you to put aside your business and your profit into something wider, which innovation methodology can help you to do that. And like that, you need to share more, you need to share success, you need to share failure, and you need to work together in a different way with a different governance that can help trust to be built amongst all, with very clear processes, with very clear methodology, so that people feel that they are coming into a win-win situation. I mean, we have several examples of that I can then share, but there is a UK thinker that I really like. I mean, it's Charles Leadbeater, that he has a phrase that I often use, in many moments of my life, which is, we are what we share. And that's exactly what collaboration is about. And what innovative collaboration can be, is that we are going on this together, we are trying to solve this huge challenge that we do have together, and we will have to share stuff, either being successful or a failure. And I think that's really the big jump that we have to do as individuals, as organizations, and as countries. I mean, COVID is a good example of that. I mean, we are just living a pandemic. How has been collaboration? Has that been good? I mean, the science part says that is good. The probably geopolitical part is not so good. Is innovation good? I mean, are we already actually innovating together to tackle some of the impact that pandemics has bring to the real society, to the business? Probably not enough. So how can we actually build up innovative mechanisms that can boost that collaboration and bring really value and impact to our society and to our planet.
There's some fantastic points there, and bringing COVID into play. I mean, I think that has really forced the world to collaborate, and it's really shown, okay, who really has the ability to, jump out of their comfort zone and think differently with other people. So, there are players out there that have, and countries and companies that have done it well. There's ones that haven't done it. Now, I'm having it.
Sort of wanted to add out here, which I think Renata kind of highlighted very nicely. Collaborative innovation is not about competing; it's about complementing each other.
Absolutely,
that's a very, very important point. So thanks for mentioning that.
And also the fact, and I think Rhona, you mentioned it earlier, about having that greater sense of purpose is what can bring everyone together. So there's some really, really good and enlightening things there now. Yeah. Now on to the next question. This is going to be a favorite of mine, because I'm guessing that we can all remember the fax machine and remember working before the that thing called the internet. But if we look at it, Rhona, you're denying it. Okay, so I started my career in 1986, and at IBM we had profs, which was like email, but no one knew what email was. There was no sense of, people were still typing letters and stuff. But for those of us who've really lived through that age, we've seen the fax machine come and go, et cetera, et cetera. We now live in a very hyper-connected world. I mean, this thing called the internet really can be seen as the global enabler of collaboration and then innovation. For you look at some of the mega brands today, the top 10 brands are all technology brands, where once upon a time it was Coca-Cola and other food products, right? So the pandemic has really brought to light the importance or the challenges that we have with the online world. But I just want to throw around the room, the internet, whilst it's been an enabler, has some challenges, like with privacy, regional regulations, and then we have rights management. What are some of the challenges that you all see? And I'll start with you, Ricardo. The internet. What are some of the challenges that we'll see? What can we do to overcome, to continue to foster the collaboration that online and things like social media gives us? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry.
Oh, there you go. Yes.
Thanks. No, so this is sort of a far-reaching question. I can give you my 2 cents of how I think, at least in Europe, we're looking at this. Definitely I would say two things here. Making sure that people's rights and people's let's say privacy is taken into account here. Not only the privacy of your own data, but how your view can be skewed to a certain point. I mean, but this is definitely this is a big topic. The second point that I think could be definitely interesting to see is, how do we ensure a level playing field when we have these tech giants and we suddenly have these very large platforms? How are we able to have all this data, for example? How are we sure to enable a level playing field with, if I'm a SME that's also relying on data, that also want to have access, and I don't have this big user base, how can I be sure to gain some, and this is, how can I get some advantages? And this is definitely going to be something that that is going to have some time to work on. We know of the whole Digital Services Act that the European Commission is trying to put forward, right? So this is new legislation that will, to some extent, also govern this. So will, on the one hand, force some moderation to content that is right, and force some responsibility, also to add some transparency, especially if you have recommender systems, how these are targeting you, and on the same time, democratize to some extent the access to data, right? I mean, if large platforms, especially if we consider a very large platform, they have this distinction there. This is something that definitely is interesting to see, and it'll be interesting to see how this pans out. Right? So that's definitely a point. I mean, on a more pragmatic perspective, more closer to home, so to see. I mean, you've seen the internet has enabled cooperation to happen over various regions. And there has been this different emergence of smaller platforms that try and bring together actors. And you do see some interesting initiatives, as for example, the Open Business Council is one, and for example, one that we work with the European Commission, which is a European Innovation Council, a community. They're also trying to create a larger network where you can have a place of business with multiple actors and with larger movements. So this could also be interesting to see some emergence of some dominant platforms there. Of course, it's interesting to see if they don't crowd out and don't make the playing field too unleveled. Right? So this is going to be interesting. So, especially if you have neutrality in these platforms, I think that would be a key point.
Yeah, and it's a great point that you bring up with this event with the Open Business Council. Is it's enabled to bring us together and really collaborate with our experiences and our thoughts. Now, Rhona, your thoughts on this? I'm coming from the UK, where let's throw the Cambridge Analytica. If you want to answer for that, that's just one sample of that. That's really made everyone rethink privacy and data. You know, what are some of the things that you see where we should be heading from a regulatory and an infrastructural side for the internet?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as time's gone on in the last 18 months and more people have reflected on their lives and what's important, I think there's two elements for me going forward in the future. And we talked earlier about these, you know, the kind of the big companies being tech. One of them is around a movement towards more human-centric tech. Let's be honest, most people are pretty peeved when they start to learn more around how their data is treated, what they can do with it, and basically the power that the likes of, you know, Facebook and Google actually have. So from a human individual consumer level, that's frustrating. So as they've learned more about brands and marketing and reading between the lines and greenwashing, they're now entering the space of data. Secondly, if you're a brand or a business and you want to engage in communities with genuinely interesting content, you can't, because Facebook and Google own the rights and the systems to do it. So I think personally there'll be a huge drive towards more human-centric tech. And then secondly, as we go into the world of blockchain, AI, NFTs, you know, I'm learning more at a pace that I never thought I would, around how we can actually, how reality is going to get warped. And, you know, could the real person and physical cash be the enemy in 50 years' time? And that's the illegal way to do things. You know, that's very far-fetched, but I think the reality about how tech potentially could go in that space. So listen, I think, yes, we're very much more aware about our data and what can be done with it. But it's a huge space. I love having conversations and learning more about the kind of future-centric side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Renata, your thoughts from your side of the world on the internet and the applications?
So I agree that data is the greatest, I would not like to call it threat, but in fact it is a big challenge to solve, not just in terms of regulation, but all around ethics. I think is a huge issue. How do you use data, for what? Does the person that you are using data about knows that you are using and understands why you are using? So that there are all these issues that can be seen as moral and ethical issues that I don't think have been addressed yet. I also think that this is a global issue and that our global institutions are still very much focused on some of the challenges after the Second World War. So probably we need some rethinking of what these international institutions might be doing in the future. I'm not suggesting that they should stop doing some of the things that they are doing that are still very impactful, but others probably they need to substitute to what are being at this stage something that really threatens societies and our future as well. And I also think that regulation, and that comes back to the international institutions, needs to be global as well. I mean, at the moment you have one in China, you have one in Europe, one in the US, Brazil has its own. And that's quite complex as well, because, you know, the world is globalized and we actually, and companies are working everywhere. And I know that, companies are used to work with different regulations in different countries, but this is a bit different, because going back to Rhona's point, this is about people. This is about our stuff. My data that is probably going to be used in a product in China or in India or in Portugal or elsewhere. So it's quite complex, and sometimes we kind of bring this down to a regulatory framework, which I don't think is as simply as that. So I would like to see a bit more investment into this by the global institutions. I would like this to be discussed in international forums such as G7, G20, because, this is something of real importance. If we are going to continue and nothing is telling us that we are going back with no internet, we need to sort of come up with something a bit more solid that brings this playground, this baseline that is equal to all, and makes, something that is positive to all and not just for some.
You made a really interesting point there. I mean, having moved to Europe and loving war movies in the Second World War, it's so true that we are still living in the shadow of the Second World War. A lot of these global forums were created for peace in the Second World War, and also the privacy model. I mean, in Europe we have the GDPR, but still Germany has its own privacy regulations. Here in Copenhagen we have our privacy regulations. So for as brands and marketers, it's really scary. So how can we collaborate and innovate when the playing field is different on a platform that is inherently global? Now, Subhash, you have worked at an ISP and you worked for a media provider, and you have been waiting to answer this question. You can say that I've been saving the best to last. Tell us your thoughts about the internet and media content privacy. What are your thoughts, and your thoughts on what everyone else has as well? I'd love to hear it.
Thank you. Sometimes always good to get the last chance. That really helps you to formulate your thoughts.
The last word, yeah.
The last one. But indeed, something. The way I look at it is that, as far as internet is concerned and the privacy is something, it's like you have a car. Once you have a car, you got to be pretty much sure someday or the other you're going to bang it with someone. And the only thing which can save you probably your insurance. Now, if you use the same analogy, internet is either you're there, you're not there, right? There's nothing really you can prevent from getting leaked out. And the way I define is that till such time someone gets to know my account balance in my bank or gets into my bedroom, everything is pretty much out there, known to every goddamn person in the world. Because we are living in a connected world, there's nothing much you can really hide, right? The problem out here is not privacy, I would say. The problem is who's in charge of maintaining this privacy. Unfortunately, what we happen today, every policymaker worth their salt and every agency, they are having their own battle. A lot to do with their own interest, and less to do with more from people, privacy. Unless they come together, okay? I'm going to give an example. If you look at crypto, for instance, some countries work on crypto, some countries don't. And crypto is going to be the order of the day, few months, few years down the line. That's a virtual currency, everyone's going to be using it. Now, in that space itself, every country has their own finicky way of looking at it or funny way of looking at it, both extremes, right? So I guess that's one thing. And over the last 15, 16 years, the way internet has developed is grown by leaps and bounds, okay? Internet came to us in the form of Hotmail, USA.net. Today has gone beyond everything. Classic example, I don't know if you recall, a few years back, I get 2 years back, there was a big issue of Alexa, Amazon Alexa devices. Hearing out every goddamn conversation happening in the household. And it is something which everyone knows. It's all over Google, all across all news agencies. Has that stopped the sales of Alexa, Siri, or Google device, or anyone for that matter? Not really. So therefore, the question comes in two ways. How concerned are we in terms of privacy? And B, what are the policies which are available today? And how long these policies are working together? Again, collaborative way of working together across multiple agencies. So I don't think, if you ask me, I don't think there's a definite answer to it because there's no definitive solution. Okay, one cannot stop Google from working in any country. One cannot stop Facebook from entering that country. To the largest Facebook office, largest development center for Facebook, Google, Microsoft is in India. One of the biggest guys who got advantage of Cambridge Analytica was India. And Indians still scream about privacy. You can't match these dots together. Which is
I think it can feel quite overwhelming, can't it? For the everyday user, it's a little bit like sustainability or climate change. They know they want to do something, they know about it, but having that right knowledge and education and information, you feel overwhelmed. You feel like you don't stand a chance because the powers that be are so much greater than you. But when we change that mindset and we change the communication, actually, it is your data, as Renata said. This is me. Why are you earning money from it? I should be earning money from it. So that human-centric tech needs to develop in wider education.
The whole thing off. I mean, it's like you're sitting in a tennis match. You're just watching someone saying privacy, someone saying, hey, we're going to stop it. You're just walking both sides. You don't get a solution.
Yeah, absolutely.
So and I think what Rhona did mention is tech for good, the human-centric approach, which everyone is talking about, but no one is really implementing it, which is the need of the hour.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm coming from. Sorry.
Ricardo, I can see you're in deep thought. I was told somewhere if someone's looking to the top left, they're really processing something there. Is there something you need to come out with?
I'm still wrapped in thoughts. I haven't really been able to verbalize it yet, but I will. I was just listening to what you were saying. Now, what I was thinking, getting to a point, is I think it's in these cases, especially as Rhona saying, where you don't feel powerful, that you really need legislation to come in, right? And it might not, we might not all be happy with it, right? Because it can stifle to some point. And there was a lot of discussion when we had the GPDR that this was going to stifle innovation and we weren't going to be able to develop as quickly. I mean, on the other hand, this can be also a driver for innovation. And I mean, one example, there were these COVID detection apps, right, to detect contacts that were able to be developed and used in Europe, although, while respecting privacy for data. So here, I would say that it does make sense to rely a little bit on legislation, because it's something that we do feel that on a day-to-day basis we can't do anything about. Yeah. Although we would all argue that it is important, but at the same day, I mean, am I going to Google something in Google, or am I going to use DuckDuckGo, for example, which is a search engine that will have a little bit more privacy? We're going to use Google. So it's the same as the Alexa example, right? We're going to use what's more convenient. So here, I do think it makes sense to have some legislation in place that can actually, you know, put some stops in places, and again, to allow people to innovate. But I may have some pushback on that. But that's more or less what I was going.
Before I jump to you, Subhash, I just want to quickly add that for me, working in marketing, GDPR was fantastic.
It is.
Why? Because it took the cowboys out of the equation. It gave the control back to the individual, that you own your own data. So as a brand, when you have consent, you have a greater value, a greater asset from someone. So I think that was, everyone was expecting something different. They were expecting, you know, the world's going to implode, but it did change that. So Subhash, did you have any thoughts that you wanted to build on?
No, I mean, I think the perfect example of privacy is GDPR. Absolutely, I completely agree with you. But that's only in one country of 65 million people.
Oh, one continent. But we still have German privacy regulations.
Yes, it is. That's what I'm saying. So just to build on what Ricardo had just mentioned, there needs to be legislation. Yes, there needs to be legislation, but it has to be a global legislation.
Yes. Yeah.
It has to be followed, approved, accepted by everyone.
And we're still not, as the data owner.
Which is utopian.
Earning the money from it. We should be earning the money from it. It's our data.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Look, I've built a network on LinkedIn that has 30,000 members, and I can't do anything with it now. I've managed it. I never owned the data, but guess what? You can go into LinkedIn and you can advertise to that group. And the hundreds of hours I've put into it, I'm not seeing anything. And I'm a little bit, okay, that's a bit of it. But, you know, this is the world. This is the Wild West, and this is how things are changing. Look, let's move on to the next question, because we could really go deep dive into a lot of these things. I really want to talk about the culture of innovation. And one thing that's fantastic about this group, I wish I could take credit for collecting you guys, because what we have is a really nice spread of different cultures. I suppose we're missing some Americans. I'm kind of Australian. Renata, can I start with you in terms of what is culture and how is it important to collaborative innovation? If you think about work culture, culture from a country, or an individual's culture, it could be religious based, but in general, what effect does culture have on collaborative innovation?
Yeah, I mean, if collaborative innovation is a recipe, I think culture is the ingredient that needs to be there. I mean, it is really very, very challenging for do any sort of innovation if the culture is not there, or if that innovation is not impacting on culture. I mean, we work with a number of corporates here in Brazil, which obviously want to innovate, want to bring fast results from innovation to their businesses. That there is this very strong relation that innovation needs to bring impact in terms of cash, in terms of profit, which is right, and I think we should follow that path too. But most of the times we say, what about the culture? Like that, you probably are going to have business units working together that never really did that before, or probably you have your boards talking about innovation, which was something that they avoided until the moment that you started an innovation program. Or probably you are doing an entrepreneurship event that really brings up all these ideas, all this talent that exists in your company that, by the way, you don't know that exists, to actually solve some of the small problems that you think are huge from them, by the fact that you are open your company to others to innovate. So and that is difficult to measure. And most of the times, I mean, I sit in some boards as well, and also, and I see the difficulty of talking about innovation because of, okay, so what are the KPIs of innovation? Okay, so how are you going to measure the impact of this investment? I mean, is this investment going really to put me on the digital company, on the more digital company of my sector? Is it going to solve me this and that huge challenge that I have? And sometimes it doesn't, and that's really the thing that we really need to be very clear about, is that sometimes just by doing an investment in an innovation program doesn't mean that you are going to become the next Google or the next Facebook. So there is a lot of that, there is a lot of this expectation that if you do innovation, you are going to be the next unicorn and the next wow. And I think we need to sort of manage that expectations a bit better, because, we have always innovated. In fact, we are here today as human beings because we have been able to innovate. I mean, that's great. We have this wonderful brain and mind that has been able to keep curiosity going. Now, the problem is that we find is, how do we bridge the gap between what is culture and what is the business return from innovation? And that really has been our greatest challenge, how to bring that, as I said, to the CEO, to the shareholders, to the various units, to the engineers that actually, by the way, I mean, I'm an engineer, I can say that, they think that they already innovate, they are great, and they don't need to work with a startup or an external entrepreneur because they know it all. And sometimes, again, open mind, be able to share, be able to risk your own knowledge, your own assumptions, is extremely important. So what I often suggest for culture is that, is a slower process. Is not something that you actually do like that. You can probably solve a business unit problem or a factory energy efficiency issue very quickly, but you cannot change the mindset of 10 people sitting around a table that actually make the decision that way. So you really need to think, what sort of actions are you going to do in the medium, long term, short, medium, and long term to actually start changing that mindset? And that is a lot with benchmarks of what is happening outside, is a lot of having champions inside the companies, the organizations, is a lot of educating, in fact, of bringing examples of the good things and also the bad things. And it's a process. It's not something very straightforward. I would say that is the greatest challenge of innovation. It's not actually coming up with a solution. It's actually having someone that decides that they want to invest and they want to go forward with innovation within their companies and organizations. Absolutely.
Now, Rhona, you're as a consultant, I imagine you've been and seen many different companies now over the last 5 years. What's your take on innovation, having learned from seeing the different, or the culture behind innovation? Is there any patterns that you've seen in your consulting days?
Yeah, I think picking up really on the flow of Renata is one of the things that I often, before I start working with a client, or one of the things that I see as around enablers or blockers is around the board and the C-suites. So, you can tell quite quickly, actually, how open they are to that, opening their hearts and their knowledge being questioned. But also, I think around, often we look at culture and think different countries. For me as well, it's around the diversity and inclusion across the business, on who's involved in decision making, who's involved in innovation processes. And one of the biggest things that I talk to a lot of clients about is we all talk about ROI. And yes, as Subhash said earlier, we don't put all this effort in to not make any money from it. However, what I would say is that ROI for me and my clients is very much around return on investment, return on impact, return on interest. And then I slightly got my spelling wrong and talked about return on environment. I just replaced the E with the I. And so it's actually looking at those holistic causes around culture and innovation aligned with kind of diversity. So for me, it starts at the top. And then, yes, as Renata says, it takes time. And I've worked with some companies where I can process that very quickly and we can create change very quickly. And then others, honestly, I've walked away from.
No, absolutely, because it's just more effort dealing with the internal culture that's just toxic sometimes. Now, Ricardo, you were saying this is one of your favorite questions in our preparations. You're in a leadership position, and as Rhona said, this whole culture comes from the top and has to move down. What are your thoughts and experience on that?
I really like this question because it relates a lot to what we do, right? And this also relates to what Renata, I think, was saying, as we also work a lot with large corporations, trying to bridge the gap between SMEs and corporates, but also in networks where we have more of a level playing field, as I was saying before. I would just touch about the culture, sort of transparency versus secrecy. I would say sort of a general try and push for transparency, but respect secrecy. So this is something that, don't force people to come out if they don't feel like, because it's just going to hamper interesting conversations, right? I mean, being very pragmatically, we should try and for people to share and try and have things as open and transparent as possible. But if it's at a certain stage, you have to start going behind closed doors, and normally, you should just let that process happen, because otherwise you might put people uncomfortable, not allow actual projects to happen. What I relate to other 2 points here that I've heard, I think it was Rhona and Renata discuss, which is on the KPIs. In our experience, we see this a lot when we're working with corporates. Those that come from more, let's say, a CVC background. So when you have metrics that's related to return on investment, hard metrics, you see this a little bit harder to actually bridge in with new companies, right? Because here, what matters is, okay, I need 10x return here, right? Or I'm going to invest a portfolio of 5 and I need 10x returns. Whereas if you're working with the ones whose open innovation department actually came from wanting to create this culture of innovation, you're going to have normally some KPIs that are much more flexible, more qualitative, and actually align with the strategic goals of the corporation. And here you have lots of different configurations, but it's interesting to see that this is actually more innovation friendly because it was created with that purpose. Not wanting to take too much time, we're now out of time. I would like to do another point that I think was also touched upon here by my colleagues before, and it's the question of people. When you're relating to corporates, in the work that we do, we see different constellations. Sometimes you have a large open innovation department that's already working. Sometimes you have like a one-person show that's, we say, thrown to the wolves and say, okay, now you're the innovation manager, get innovation in our company. And it's interesting to see, especially in these situations where you can have corporations that are not very innovation prone, and they're thrown into an environment where they suddenly have the goals and the pressure to start creating innovation. And basically this starts a lot with people and their relationships with the plant managers or the department managers, right? Basically their goal is to try and find innovations outside, and we normally try and help them do that. But at the same time, they have to be sure that they are first selling the innovation to the right person internally, for two sides. On the one hand, they want to make sure that the company actually has success internally, because that's part of their metrics. But on the other hand, I mean, okay, they're the same corporate, but the plant manager XYZ, if the technology doesn't solve the problem in 6 months, if the pilot doesn't really return the results, maybe they won't be as keen to help the colleague from the corporate. So it's this soft power or convincing that has to be done inside the corporation, which is very, very interesting. And there, you know, it's important to have the right initiatives and the right points to actually bring, or to convince people to work together. It's very exciting, but I don't want to go into too long because I know we only have a couple of minutes.
And we've got a couple of minutes. And Subhash, looks like you can have the last words on this in terms of the culture of innovation. So your thoughts.
Sure. So, you know, in Technoplat, one of the mantras that we follow is empowering all those companies, all those ideas, all those startups, which looks at creating a difference using technology as a tool for the critical mass. And that's what, to me, is what innovation is. Innovation is not for one person or two people or few in the organization. You've got to come up with those kind of stuff, be it in a collaborative way or working with others, that impacts 1 million lives, if not 1,000 lives, and helps them to create a little more value in the way they're leading their life. It could be banking, it could be e-commerce, it could be simple irrigation, but still, that's what comes as the most important thing. And secondly, which I think is more relevant today, is you also got to ensure that collaborative innovation and you know, sort of working together with everyone has to bring all the right set of partners. Okay, it's important to choose the right set of partners. Otherwise, all that innovation that we've been talking about, intending to do, falls flat on our face. So identifying the right set of partners and to whom we are sort of creating the difference. And these are two sort of key points which I think are very important for any kind of innovation, be it corporate, be it collaborative. Again, that's what I would like to sort of rest my comments.
No, fantastic. We've got a quick lightning round. The fourth industrial revolution. Let's do a quick round of thoughts. Is this going to be real? Artificial intelligence, blockchain, Internet of Things, robotics, drones, virtual reality, 3D printing. Let's go a quick lightning round, starting Ricardo. What?
Very quickly, I think it's here. I think it's already part of our life. Fourth industrial revolution with data in Europe. I think this is something that we can, while data on people we kind of lost or we kind of losing, I think data on industry and tech, we actually have something that's happening and it's aligned with a European strategy here. Artificial intelligence, blockchain, robotics, drones, 3D printing. I see places for all of this, and it is happening. I mean, within our networks, we are developing this right now in our company in Germany and next to the Minaj. So this is definitely here and happening.
Rhona, thoughts on the fourth industrial revolution?
In 30 seconds, go. Yeah, it's definitely here. I've seen my client using drones for sampling because of COVID. I'm involved in a ton of networking groups around crypto, blockchain, NFTs. And I do a lot of that in kind of my podcasting conversations as well. So it's absolutely here. What I hope, to Ricardo's point, is that we take people on that journey and we don't freak them out by it, so they are better informed and are not scared.
Renata, fourth industrial revolution.
Absolutely, very quickly, yes, all of these technologies are already a reality here in Brazil. Lots of good examples, and I fully agree that we need to explain a bit more the advantages of this to our society and to our planet.
Subhash?
It's here. You just got to go and embrace it.
Yes, that's fantastic. And look, thanks everyone, guys. It's been so much fun. And I think from working on our Google Doc last week and meeting you guys, like an hour ago, has been great. Denise and the team at the Open Business Council, thank you for the invitation. And I think we wave out right on 1 hour, right? So we've got like 10 seconds to go. So maybe we can just wave to everyone and say, thanks, hope you've enjoyed it. And
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yes, and look us up on LinkedIn.
And Jomar, thank you so much for organizing and
Thank you.
moderating.
You're welcome.
And thanks to each one of you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, enjoy
Thanks,
the
everyone.
evening.
Nice
Bye-bye.
And please connect with everyone
Ciao.
on LinkedIn as well. Yeah, thanks, guys.
And thanks, Jomar, for the great
Hey,
moderation.
One sec. If you guys still here, one sec. Just